Laughed in a while. It feels good.
That laughing is a good thing, Mike.
Oh, yes, it is.
Um,
It's healing.
hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. And I am not in my usual space. I am at home, but I'm outside, and we've got some housework going on. So I am recording or bringing you the show live from my backyard. So if you see anything roaming around, that is a real thing, and please tell me if there's a bear or something. But I am excited to bring to you this episode. It is still Disability Employment Awareness Month, National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And so I wanted to bring these three guests to you, who I found out about through actually the Raleigh Convention Center at a Raleigh Convention Visitors Bureau event. And they had worked with Ablr, the team at Ablr, on creating more accessible events at the convention center in Raleigh. So with me, below me is John Samuel, who is the co-founder and CEO. To the right of him or left of him is Mike Iannelli, who is the co-founder and chief revenue officer at Ablr. And to my left or right is Kim Casey, who has 2 decades of experience in the accessibility industry. Slow down, Tracy. And she's the director of accessibility for Ablr. So welcome to the show, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
I'm so excited to have you there, have you here. Okay, so I want to know, I heard about Ablr from the convention center, but tell everybody else what Ablr is. Who wants to start with that? And how did the three of you connect to work here?
So, I mean, I can start off with who Ablr is, and then we can pass that to John in terms of how we all got together. But Ablr, as do you need to get that?
No, I probably do, but I'm not going to. Thank you.
So much fun. I think we should do this every week. Ablr was founded 4 years ago, but Ablr is a full service disability inclusion and digital accessibility company. So we're a nonprofit, we're mission driven, and our core value is to put people back to work, give people the opportunity, folks with disabilities, for meaningful career paths. And really level the playing field from an inclusion perspective. I mean, oftentimes we talk about DEI and we talk about, the black, the white, the gender identification, the religion, all that stuff. And then we exclude the entire disability community. And that disability community covers the entire spectrum. And so our mission is really to create, level the playing field. We have sort of 3 key components. One is the digital accessibility, which is eliminating the digital divide. We have what we call changing mindsets, which is training, right? Because creating a universal experiences for people is mission driven, number one. But at the same time, if we're not teaching people how to communicate from an etiquette perspective, an inclusive language perspective, we're missing the boat. So we work with organizations to train their teams to ensure that people understand what etiquette and inclusive language is. And then we have an incredible program called Ablr Works, which is a workforce development program where we work with state government and division services for the blind and special populations. And we work with individuals who are looking for a change in their lives, that have a disability or visual impairment, that for too long they've been sort of pushed aside and set back, living below the poverty line, not having access to education, not having access, frankly, to anything. And then we work with the counselors at these states, these great counselors that bring individuals in there wanting to make a change. And we provide them with a 14-week program with assessments and resume support and mentorship. And then this training where they become certified accessibility analysts and some other programs where they can get meaningful career opportunities and be back on that leveling playing field. So that's a lot. As you know, you can probably tell right now, I like to talk a lot. So we'll probably get to the next question and I'll be quiet for a minute. But that's what Ablr does. And we love what we do and we're grateful to be here.
Okay. Well, and John and Kim, I want to hear from you on how this came about, because Mike you two, John, you have a disability, and Kim, you work with people with disabilities, and Mike, you came into this knowing nothing.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I spent about 25 years in digital advertising and marketing, and I'm very honest about my life. About 4 years ago, I went through a really, really rough time. I don't know if you've ever heard of the dark times or I went through a dark time, was basically unable to function much as a human being. And everything that could possibly go wrong was going wrong in my life, whether I deserved it or not. It happened. And during that time, I was asked to go meet an organization in Durham called LCI, LC Industries. And I had no idea, but they're the largest employer of the blind in the United States. And I was asked to go do a tour, and they have a manufacturing facility, and they produce incredible products for the U.S. military and for some other major brands. And when I walked in the door, this attractive gentleman walked up to me with a white cane and said, "Hi, I'm John Samuel." And I was like, "There's no way this guy's blind, right?" I didn't know. I couldn't tell. I had no etiquette. I had no training. I was probably a little uncomfortable, but John was my tour guide that day. And John took me through the facilities. And, I say that changed my life. It did. But what really kind of hit me over the head was when I was leaving, I heard a screen reader for the first time. I had this noise, and I had never heard it before. And we'll talk screen readers a little bit, but it was so fast that I asked John, I said, what was that noise on your phone? And he said, "Well, that's how I keep up with business. That's my screen reader." And at that moment in time, it was like someone came out of nowhere and just literally punched me right in the stomach. And I realized that I had built websites and mobile apps and all these great branding campaigns, and I never even considered the disability community, ADA, WIC. I never even understood it, didn't know what it was. It was just, I was so selfish in my own way that I excluded people my entire life. And at that moment, I went back home, and that changed my life. I went to John and I said, "Hey man, I want to help you do whatever you're doing. Let's come together with this and let's build something amazing." And John and I came together shortly after that. And it's been a 4-year journey that has not only changed my life and who I am as a person, but has changed lives of thousands of people in the work that we're doing here. So
Awesome.
it's been an incredible story and an incredible journey.
Right,
and I'm
so
very
John,
grateful for my partners on the phone here as well.
John, what was your experience with meeting Mike that first time?
Yeah, I mean, it was it was an experience, because I had, at the time I had been a couple years working at LCI. I had joined LCI tasked with creating this new business that would create upward mobility for people who are blind. And as Mike mentioned, it LC Industries is primarily a manufacturing company, and they wanted to create this upward trajectory in technology-based fields. And so had been doing some accessibility work, and our team was made up of all people who are blind, and we were doing some work. But we weren't necessarily breaking the level, the next step in our journey. And so, when I met Mike, Mike and his background in marketing and all the experience that he was doing, I got really excited about that. And because I thought in my own mind, I also showed Mike my watch, which is the E1 timepiece. And to me, I was like, this is something that shows accessibility can be sexy. And when I heard about Mike's background, I was like, Mike can help make us show the world that accessibility can be sexy. And through the work that we can do together,
I like that.
We can change that mindset. And so for me, Mike was the divine intervention was when he heard my screen reader. When I met Mike, I thought this is the person who can help, really, change the mindset of people to really show, accessibility is more than just, white text on a black background, but it can be sexy. So yeah, awesome. that was my experience with Mike. And, and we meet people, I think Mike is vulnerable. Mike is genuine, that he's sharing, like, that's how a lot of people are when they first meet. They don't know what they don't know, but Mike was vulnerable enough to be able to have conversations and to be willing to talk openly. And I knew he came from a good place.
Awesome. Kim, how did these two swindle you into this?
And it was a swindle. I'm still figuring out why I'm here. Well, actually, I had a similar I had a similar experience to Mike. I started off at least 20 years earlier than Mike, where my first experience with somebody with a disability. I went to an interview. I was still in college at the time. Went to an interview to interview for like a male type office management job. So I went to the interview, and the gentleman that I met was completely blind. And it was this kind of just like Mike. Well, what do I do? What do I say? How do I approach him? Like, and oh, darn, I said, see you later when I closed the interview. Like, I bet I didn't get that job. So there's all this like really awkward thing that Mike's talking about. But, what I ended up doing, I got the job, obviously. And it was a really great opportunity. I've had the privilege of working with two huge visionaries. So the first one was to create navigation software for people who are blind. And this is before it was on cell phones. So we're talking about carrying a backpack with a computer. But people who were blind had been starved of this information for so long, they didn't care. I mean, they had keyboards sticking out of their pocket, and they, if it didn't work, they were like, well, it's good enough. It got me on the block. So that was a really fun experience. And I did that for just under 20 years. And then the other Mike in John's life, the man I was working for was named Mike. And so he met John. John's got many Mikes.
I got lots of Mikes.
So we met when we were collaboratively working, because John loves to spread the word and help, everybody. He wants to get everybody on board, right? So we were working for one of the National Institutes of the Blind Industries organizations in Wichita, and John came to visit us and said, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. Do you want to work with me? And so we did that for a while, and then, like John said, his entire team was everybody with visual impairments. And so it was just, every once in a while, he just needs somebody who could lend their eyes and say, what am I looking at? What am I seeing? This is taking me 20 minutes to figure out what's on this screen, when I could just say, oh, it's a button that says submit. That's all it is. You're good to go. So, that's kind of, I think my whole thing, I've been tricked into these. I actually didn't plan on getting into the accessibility industry. I started off studying economics. I thought I was going to be, this fancy accountant and all that fun stuff, but I decided to take the accessibility route, and it's been like a constant journey of learning my entire life, and fun, absolute fun. So
we swindled Kim by 10, just need 10 hours this week. Then it went 20 hours, then 30, and then it went to 60, whatever it is now, and I'm so blessed to have kids.
I think I'm dialing back from 60, John. I'm getting better.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, so John had to ask permission to take me from the other Mike.
I did.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I went and asked permission, and it was like asking a father for his daughter's, hand in marriage, and and by the time he's like, "You already have her. You're coming to me after the point." I said, "Oh, I guess you're right."
Well, that's what happens when majority of the time when people ask for their person's hand in marriage. So, okay, so. Where you guys you're in tech and I'm in food, but you all have to eat. John, you have to eat. So, everybody needs to eat. How does that relate to meetings and events? We all have to eat. So what is the biggest challenge? And I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to also just throw this thing on there. Is there a lot of tech out there that enables you to know what you're eating, eat better, or whatever that question needs to be?
Yeah, so I think there's I can unpack that in a couple of ways. One is, we'll take it really low tech. When I used to go to networking events, I often would struggle at these events because I wouldn't make eye contact, or I would miss handshakes, and people thought I was a jerk, right? And so I thought when I got a cane, people realize, oh, he's blind. That's why he's not smiling at me. I thought that would change everything. But actually, the cane had the opposite impact. People weren't coming up to me because the fear of saying the wrong thing. And so I started thinking about, what can I do to make my cane, this assistive technology that I need to get around, more approachable. And I don't know if you remember an old TV show called Pimp My Ride, and on MTV. And Pimp My Ride, this rapper exhibit would go to people's houses and take people's old cars and deck them out into these fancy, cool cars. And I was like, how can I pimp out my cane? And so we launched Drip My Cane, and that's taking, we had designers from all over the world redesign what the cane looked like to
Oh,
make it a
cool.
piece of art that people could talk about. And actually,
Mhm.
this idea came about when I was in the Raleigh Convention Center at one of those
Oh, wow.
networking events,
Uh-huh.
right? And so now having this cane, so that low tech device, that low tech device is something I needed to get around in events. I needed to help me navigate the world, and it's something I struggled to be able to utilize. But once I had the cane now handled, there was a piece of tech that really helped me with my phone. And
Mhm.
on the phone, I downloaded this app called Seeing AI, and it allows me to read what text on a menu. Those type of things really helped out. Having the tech on my phone and having
Mhm.
my white cane, two different types of, one low tech, one high tech,
Right.
and those two really helped me. But it also took me, also coming to grips with asking people for help. Something I struggled with for so long was to ask people, like, if I need help, to be able to do it. And then also self-advocacy. I had to advocate for what I needed, the accommodations I needed, for me to have a successful event and eating experience.
Okay, so then that brings me to the question. I worked the Vancouver Olympics, the Paralympics, and we went through some training, probably 2 hours, not very much, about how we interact with the Paralympic athletes, right? And John, it comes down to, do we just automatically help you without asking you? But no, right? So how in the training that you all do, can you share some of that etiquette that would help us connect that disconnect where John didn't want to ask, and then we could ask for, can we assist? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Kim, and you have a lot of experience with this. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one, I would always notice, I'd be traveling. I did a lot of traveling. Obviously, we were doing navigation software. So we had to get our message and do demos everywhere. It had to be live. This was before any of this virtual stuff existed. So the thing that hit me the most was that servers would come up and talk to me like there wasn't another person there. Or,
Mhm.
like he wasn't capable of making his own decisions. Or if they did talk to them, they would yell at him like he couldn't hear or something
Right.
like that. So I think the first thing is just make sure you're asked, like you said, ask that person if they need help, and then just kind of
Mhm.
take the lead from them. That's probably the best advice. And that goes too with like touching anybody's mobility. So like if say John's cane happened to be sticking out, or if John had a guide dog, um, you know, instead of moving the device, make sure you ask for permission first. So
Okay.
it's one of those things where it's an extension of the person. So
Mm-hmm.
treat it as if you're touching that person, and be very respectful of that device.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
And I think you said a lot. Person, it's people first. You have to
Mm-hmm.
remember that we're people first, and that I want good service just like anyone else, and that means meeting me where I what I need, right? And it goes back to
Right.
that. And if we can remember that we're people first, disability is secondary. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
also a fundamental thing that in all aspects of life you can take, but it's especially in hospitality.
Well, and I was going to ask you about that because, talking to people who have food allergies, there's a lot of people who are hesitant, and you actually mentioned before we got on the show that you didn't tell anybody that you were visually impaired for 7 years. Is that right?
17 years.
17 years.
Yeah.
17. Wow, 17
He
years.
still doesn't tell
And-
anybody.
oh my goodness. But there's people with food allergies or celiac disease or whatever that don't disclose that as well because they don't want to be seen as a burden, or they don't want to be, need help. So that's a touchy subject, or, touchy way to infiltrate that and make that easier.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to it. It's like if you just if you're going to make assumptions aren't good, but if you assume that everybody has some type of condition, and goes back to like how do we make sure that we create accessible and accommodating experiences for all people, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go with that, start with assume that everyone has something going on. They just may not be telling you, and that was what it
Right.
was. I mean, I didn't want people to know because I didn't want to be treated differently. I didn't want it depended. I didn't want other people. And I had my own personal things I had to overcome. Right. That's what took me so long. But But at the end of the day, if you just assume that everybody has something going on and you need to be just treat them with the best respect that you can, it makes it easier for all people.
We're all weird. We all have something
Yeah,
going on, right?
we all got something going on,
Yeah.
right?
And I think you said, Tracy, at the beginning, we don't know what we don't know, and it's okay to make a mistake. I tell all of our clients that it's like you may make a mistake, you may say the wrong thing, and that's okay. Just I almost just have a sense of humor about it. Don't
Right.
take it too seriously and be respectful and that kind of thing. But like, it's a learning process, and you'll get better and better. And I know, traveling with somebody with, that used to ask me to read the menu. It's like, well, you get to know, even be more efficient about reading the menu. I know he won't eat any of these foods, so I'm only going to read these foods.
Yeah.
Right.
That kind of thing. So, you just be happy about the learning journey, I think, is really the best way to approach.
All right. Somebody just piped in here saying that's a superb assumption to make, that all people have needs they may not want to disclose. Inclusion is inclusion planned. Love that. And then, yep. And then Devon said, this is a great topic. And Lynn is on here saying I love this. So thank you everybody for being here. It takes me back because I worked the Vancouver Paralympics, as I told you. And one day on my day off, I went and watched the cross country skiing. And there was a woman with no arms who's doing cross country skiing, and she was in 8th place and ended up winning the bronze medal. And I'm like, I found her in the Olympic Village later on, and I'm like, I can't stand up with poles, and you just, did this for 15 kilometers with no arms. I'm like, it's mind boggling and amazing. And I just I told her, I'm like, I'm in awe of you, because it is, she set her mind to do something. And I think that's what it takes in a lot of different ways as well, is us. We all have a disability in some sort of fashion. Mine is just talking to people, but
100% on that statement, by the way. I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always say, when you talk to people all the time, I mean, it's like it's so easy to say, well, we don't have a disability, or I don't have a physical impairment, or, we all do. I mean, I struggle in a lot of ways. You got cognitive impairments, which a large percentage of people deal with every day. Mental health, these are real challenges. We all deal with challenges every single day, like John mentioned. And I think a big part of this is, and I'll just quote Johnny's, empathy, right? I mean, it's like, and it goes back to human kindness too. And that's the hardest thing for me in this. It's like, we all have our good, we all have our bad. But when we get down to like the brass tacks of existence, if we try to put other people ahead of us, and we try to be kind in every interaction, and I go, it's very difficult to do that, but we all struggle. And I think to Kim's point, if you just lead with kindness and lead with understanding, and be patient with your mistakes, because I still trip on myself every single day, but we all have a disability. We really do. And it doesn't have to be seen in order to exist.
Exactly. And Joan, who's the one that commented on the other one, she said, everyone has a disability, and we are not to be admired. We are to be included. 100% agree, Joan. I went into my Eating at a Meeting Facebook group to find out who that was commenting. So Joan, I found out.
She outed you.
I outed you, Joan.
You're good, Tracy.
Yes.
By the way, there is a bear walking behind you. I didn't know if I was
Oh, thank you so much for letting me know. Yes. Or a deer or something, maybe the raccoon. Okay, so when we're designing events for the visually impaired, and I'm doing a webinar on this, in an hour as well, accessibility, what would you like to see when a meeting planner is designing a room for accessibility? And does that mean that's not even just talking about the room itself, but the technology or the information that you need to know? And I'm going to add a story real quick to that question, is that I was planning an event at a Hyatt in Austin years ago, decade ago or more. And we were going to be the third group in house. And the group before us was going to be a group of visually impaired people. And somebody joked that, they don't need to have the hotel ready for them because they're blind. And I'm like, well, no, they actually have to have the hotel even more prepared for them because of what they need to communicate. So who wants to elaborate on that?
I actually have, I kind of took some notes before, but I think the biggest thing is to plan an event or in advance. So figure out what the needs are, ask your attendees what they might need or want. Also let them know what's available. So,
Mhm.
a lot of that is like, John may come to an event and there may be some really cool things like an electronic menu, so he doesn't have to use an outside app to read the menu, or there may be, some way where he can request assistance or something like that. So if anything's available, make sure everybody knows what it is and how to use it.
Yeah, and Cameron,
And
I would
yeah,
also
go
just
ahead.
add into that a little bit different perspective, but take a step back before you're playing an event and think of it from a universal perspective. And a
Mhm.
lot of times what we think about is, what do the norms look like? Just like I did my whole life. What does the norm look like? I built all these things my whole life and didn't even think of. But I would say for event planners is to think about every human being that exists and consider them, all of them, all of
Mhm.
us, and think about, okay, what will I need? It's not only about the baseboard heights and the access to the escalators and the elevators and the walking the spaces, but the food lines are a huge thing, right? Where are the food lines existed? Where are the restrooms? Is there support on staff to support and help anyone with special support needs or requests or accommodations? It's just change. It's really, to me, it's changing your mindset. And again,
Right.
we say that all the time, but it really has to go from changing your mindset. You got to change the way you think. You got to think about, how can I make sure that every human being here feels as if they actually belong to be here and they're included just like everyone else. And that's really the mindset that has to happen across every single thing we do. Everything we do
Right.
in life, that's how it has to happen. But that's what my thought would be, is change your mindset and think much bigger than just, I have an event to plan and I have to get it done. Think about who's attending and think about every single human being that exists and how can I accommodate all people. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, so apparently I just said something that was the most offensive comments I've ever heard. So Joan, I apologize. I don't know what I said. I didn't mean to be offensive. So please let me know what I said.
Might
Because
have
that
been
is
me.
not the intent of what that was. 100%. So I apologize. So how can, all right, technology, you help organizations
Hey,
with the
so Tracy,
technology.
real quick, I think this is not to jump in, but I think this is a real opportunity for us now. We
Yeah.
just got done talking about, being uncomfortable. And, I don't know what was said and we don't know what was said, but I
Oh.
think maybe we talked about the impairment before the people versus the people before the impairment. But this is an opportunity for us. We're all just humans. We're all just trying to work
Right.
together and figure it out. So, I think
Well,
having a
and
little grace is important.
exactly. She clarified that it was the comment that, and it wasn't
Yeah.
actually the hotel that said it. It was one of my coworkers that had said it. So, okay, good. I
Okay.
thought that was
Thank
offensive
you.
as well, Joan. Thank you.
But you're doing the
But
best you can, and we all are, Tracy. So
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so technology wise, you all help with websites and making them accessible. And Mike, you've evaluated my website, and I know I've got work to do. But how do planners do that with the apps that they're making? Because a lot, take that event website that's a temporary website, not necessarily housed on their regular website, and then that app turns into, or that website page turns into an app for them to use. What are the best ways that we can, and I'm going to say not all websites turn into be, what's the terminology to convert it to mobile accessibility from the website?
Responsive.
Thank you. The responsive. Yes. That drives me nuts when it's not responsive. So are there some technology tools or apps that you all use and recommend for planners to use when they're doing something like this, or organizations?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those places when you are looking to work with a partner, asking the question up front: is it going to be accessible? Because a lot of times, companies are like, yeah, it's accessible, and you take it for the word that their
When they
word.
may mean like, can I get to it?
Or
Not
I tell
necessarily,
ya,
is it accessible
yeah,
to people with disabilities?
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Right.
can use it with a Mac, you can use it with a Windows. Yeah, it's
Right.
accessible. It's
It
accessible for
works.
yeah,
It's
you got it.
great.
It works. So and that's what we hear. We hear it way too often, and that's why it's important that one of the things that makes our team unique is that we actually have people with lived experiences, native user-assisted technology, go through and test it out. But it's really important to ask first and be intentional about it. So when you are putting in, signing an agreement or anything of that, make sure that it is accessible for people with disabilities. The other piece is there's also a document called a Voluntary Product Accessibility Template, or a VPAT. Make sure that when you're working with an organization that provides an app or any of these type of products, ask them to see a VPAT. If they don't know what a VPAT is, most likely not accessible. So that's, that gives you a clear cut. And if they say, oh, we're willing to do it, then that's when you reach out to an organization like Ablr. It doesn't have to be Ablr itself, it can be anyone, but reach out to an organization and have them test it out before you, because you're spending your hard-earned money. And and then once you find an organization, that's how we start to change, organizations and product companies. We change it with our money, with our wallets. When you start to say, I'm not going to use your platform, I'm going to use this one because it's accessible, right? That's how we start to make real change.
What I thought was interesting from the Convention and Visitors Bureau is that they've decided, the director of marketing had said, I'm going to take some money that I would use to do marketing and I'm going to apply it to this so that we can make our facility more accessible. And she wasn't doing it all in one fell swoop, but she was making a conscious decision, like, we have to do this. And this is how we're going to do it, by taking stuff from this pocket and putting it into this pocket.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to so many conferences, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, right? And a lot of DEI events.
Yes.
And I was completely cut out. Even ones I'm speaking at and participating, the number of event platforms we've been on where I'm a speaker, a keynote, or a panelist or something that's not accessible. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Wow.
And these are about diversity, equity, inclusion. One was about a usability, wasn't it?
It was the one that we struggled with. Yeah, we were all sweating.
I'm like 30 minutes late to this presentation, but it showed the example of, if you're talking about it, be about it, right? Walk the walk. Make sure that you're actually bringing on, accessible platforms. But again, it is, you have to, it starts with intentionality, and it goes back to taking those steps and taking that extra step that you're finding the right products. So,
and John, I would also just say, and Tracy, I think you mentioned, I don't know who that individual was at the CVB, but we do a lot of work with CVBs as well. And you just made a great point. Like, when we first started the company 4 years ago, it was sort of like there's a rigidity with it, right? Like, you have to be accessible. You have to do it all tomorrow. You got to be there. You're going to get sued, all these like crazy things going on. And the reality of it is that this is a new thing for people, whether or not we've never experienced it. And the fact that we should have done it and all the history of all that is great, but it's new. And so people are just learning. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't even know this. So we didn't budget for this. And so what I would just say is, don't give yourself a hard time about it. I think it does take, it's one step. It's literally a starting point. It doesn't have to all be done tomorrow. It's just, to John's point, align with an organization like Ablr or someone that's passionate about this. They can help you get through the process. It's a stepping stone. It's not all going to be done tomorrow. Even in websites or mobile apps, you can't just go through an audit process and fix every single thing in the week. We have some clients that it still takes a year to go through some of the sophistication of the remediation that we're doing. So in any situation regarding accessibility, I think it's intent, like John said, intentionality, and just taking the step and saying, we're going to change the way we look at things in this organization or this CVB or this school or this retailer. And we're going to start someplace, whether that's education, whether that's training, whether that's testing something. But that's where it all starts, because once you start, it's enlightening. And I always say this to every client we work with. I was like, once you meet Kim, forget about it. You're just going to love this, and you're going to want to do it every day. And it's going to want to transform not only yourself, but the business from the inside out. And that's really how you have to take that step. Just the first step will literally change your life. And that's what we're trying to do now, is just get people aware, generate awareness, let people know what the challenges are, but also make it okay that it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's just not going to happen in a day, and it's okay.
Okay, so Joan has a question here for you based on that. And then Kim, I want to jump to you in a second, but could you expand on what this being new and what he means?
Yeah, I will. Accessibility and inclusion. And I it's not necessarily quote unquote new, but when we talk with organizations every day, a lot of people are still unaware of it. When we started the company years ago, it started with, there were, I guess, 700 lawsuits, ADA. I think they're forecasting over 10,000 this year. Having conversations with people that didn't understand what ADA was, or what WCAG was, or what accessibility was, or what it literally took to do it. Like how, a lot of times people are saying, hey, well, how does my website look better? Are you going to take my website and turn it into just a text website? And there's just a lot of misnomers. There's a lot of education that's lacking, and people just aren't aware of the importance of inclusion and in the importance of creating content that's fully universal for all people. And what I mean by saying new is that I still believe that we haven't even touched on accessibility. I mean, even looking at statistics today, even 90% of all content is still inaccessible. So it's new because it's going to be new until all content's accessible. And that's just my feeling on it. And I think accessibility is sort of, John always says, the beachhead. It's the starting game of changing and transforming. You got to start with something with accessibility, and then it leads to education. And then it also leads to what we're doing with workforce development and staffing. If you surveyed, 1,000 organizations, I bet now it's gone up substantially. But I bet 40 years ago, probably I'd say less than 10% were aware. Now people are getting more aware. It's becoming more commonplace. People are talking about it. More organizations are coming up, and it's changing, but we're not anywhere near where we need to be. And that's what I mean by that. That was a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Okay. And then, and I'm going to come back to another question that she had in a second. But so Kim, on that whole note, in training people, what do you see, as the biggest challenge that people face when they're starting to learn this? Is it just like an, oh, wow, or I didn't know that? Or is it, how do I talk to John? He's blind,
Right.
Is it kind of that? What do you see?
For the most part, it's, we get a lot of apologies. Like, I'm so sorry, I had no idea. We do a lot of teaching by demonstration. Like Mike said at the beginning, most of our analysts have a disability. They use assistive technology. So we will record that experience and say, so if you have anybody who's coming to your event that is using this technology, these are the challenges they will find. And a lot of times the developers will just say, I'm so sorry, I had no clue. So there's that like kind of shame, that we advise against, of course, because we don't want anyone feeling like, like you should have known, because how would you have known? And that's another thing, Mike, you brought to the forefront in my mind, is that I'm still learning. Like every day I still learn new things and new situations, and there's no one size fits all. The other thing that I see a lot in our training is that people try to accomplish too much. Like all at once, like Mike was saying, they have this feeling it has to be 100% and it has to be by the event. Well, if you're just picking this up a few months in advance, that's like, trying to plan a wedding in a weekend or something like that. It's just, it's not going to be the ideal situation. So, mainly what I try to do is break it up into manageable pieces. And get things into buckets where people feel like they can really grab hold of something and make a difference.
Okay. I mean, I think that's really important across the board, like looking at all your menus and starting labeling them correctly. Right. But how, and Joan's question here is, it's, and then I'm going to bring up another law that's being passed, but does this mean that all hotels, destinations didn't know that the ADA existed at all? And how are the American Hotel and Lodging Association and the Asian AAHOA, because I don't want to say it the wrong way, who fight they're fighting the ADA, saying that we don't need to do these things and it's cost prohibitive and things like that. How do we combat that with the type of training that you all are doing and bringing in people to show them it doesn't need to be that hard?
I think the big thing is it's awareness, first off. Like if they had a family member who went to experience one of these destinations or something like that, they would change their mind in a second. So a lot of that is just letting them see what the experience is. Mike, did you have something to say? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, I did. I think there's a couple things going on here. I mean, the ADA is 33 years old. I think it's 33, maybe 34.
Yep.
And just so we all know, for the record, I'm going to be the dumb guy. I'm the dumb guy here, but I'm learning. 33 years old, and I believe it was updated when the iPhone came out 15 years ago. So when we talk about new, we talk like the ADA from my perspective. And again, I table stakes when it comes to digital. I mean, I look at the ADA as a compliance factor. Okay, it's compliant, and for us in Ablr and any other organization that is trying to make change like this, it's not about compliance. It's about usability. It's about experience. It's about access. And I think I look at ADA, and again, I could be way wrong here, but my position on ADA when I talk is like, that's just table stakes. You know, you're protecting yourself or the organization from potential lawsuits. I respect that. I appreciate your taking effort. But to me, ADA is not good enough. It's not even close to being good enough. And the fact is we don't have legislation right now. Hopefully we will soon. That is a requirement, because we still talk to organizations today that say, you know what, it would be nice to do, but it's just not that important to us. That's really disheartening to hear, right? Yeah. It's not important to us to actually include people, right? And so I think John mentioned it earlier, and I hate to say it again, but like it starts with, sadly in this country, everything starts with the pocket, right? And if you start thinking about 1 in 4 people with a disability and their family and friends, and if we all start saying, wait a minute, it's time to step up, right? We can all rally around other things, right? But when it comes to disability, you know, why aren't we all rallying around this? You know, it's not popular. I don't know. To me, we need to make better changes. And it does start with legislation. I mean, there should be a requirement to these things. And ADA also, just again, I'm not going off a diatribe, but it's a physical. It started with physical, right? And it was needed. You know, it was a needed thing to have. But as a government and as a country, we need to move faster. You know, getting into, like, I'll give an example, getting into a restaurant or a museum or to a game is great. I can enter in. Well, thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to get through the building. But what is my experience like? I can get to the bathroom, but like, can I actually enjoy what I'm doing? I'm paying money to be here. What is my experience like? So I think that we have to think as an organization, not as an organization, as a country, as a world, that what we have in place is not good enough. And we need to do better. So yes, we have the ADA and all these other things, but when we look at accessibility and usability, we have to change our mindset on this as a whole. There are 1 billion people worldwide, and by the way, disability, we're all aging into it, right?
Right.
You know, we're all aging into visual impairments or other challenges that we have. Why are we not putting more pressure on legislation to make some changes here? And I do think that we need to do a much better job. And I don't believe that ADA is significant enough. And that's how I feel.
Mike, one thing I like to tell everybody is that, you know, you start down the accessibility path and then you open like a creative door and people start thinking differently, and you may make it better for everyone just by looking at one population.
Right.
So there's this universal benefit as well. And, you know, and word gets around. If you have something that's really easy to use and cool and intuitive, everybody wants to use it. So,
Right.
you know, if you're that location that everyone's like, wow, I had such a great time and I could bring my aging mother and I could bring, you know, whoever I felt like, you know, it's really amazing. And so it opens doors that you don't even anticipate. So it may seem like, you know, a really bothersome or maybe tedious task to do, but you'll reap the benefits at the end almost 100% of the time.
Yeah, and
John,
it will also transform people. You know, when you start to, and I know that's a hard thing, but when you start to think of other people and other populations and people that are other than you, you know, you start being selfless a little bit and start being empathetic. It does change. I mean, it will change you. It will change who you are as a person. And again, we're not perfect. I fail every day. Every day. I probably fail multiple times a day, but it's the effort. It's the effort that matters, and coming back with intentions to do better every day. And it will change you. And so one little step to saying, hey, I'm going to work with somebody that's going to change our website or change our app or change our menu or change our experience, that will make you a better person. And it will, to Kim's point, it's addictive. And you want to do better, and it makes us want to be better as a population. So, sorry, John, go ahead, buddy.
No, that's really
much coffee this morning, I think.
No, the question that you asked, Tracy, is really interesting. It made me start thinking about somebody I know who's a restaurateur, and you know, when they were building their restaurant, you know, he was pushing back against the ADA requirements and you know, the accessibility requirements that were needed for it. And, you know, and they kind of got around it. And then, you know, as they were coming to open up the restaurant, got in an accident, a vehicle accident, and is now paralyzed. And so they put their offices up on the second floor. He can't access those offices. Right?
Wow.
The things that he had pushed against in his restaurant, he now needed it. And this is something I talk about. Proximity builds empathy, you know, about, you know, the engaging with other people. This is the closest proximity you can have. It happened to him, and it was immediate empathy. And now he's sharing his story. And going back to, we're talking about our wallets and talking about kind of what Kim was talking about, having your aging mom or come with you. But when you take the 26% of people who identify with having a disability, then you add on the friends and family, we're now getting closer to 47% of the population. That's
Right.
1 in 2 people. So if you have a group of people coming to a restaurant and it's not accessible, are we going to, or the only entrance is through by near the dumpsters? Is that where we want to go?
Mhm.
Is that the place we want to be? No, right?
Mhm.
So when you start to think about it, that you have the potential of losing business, restaurants are always
Right.
worried about that. You realize that we have to really think about the business case for it. And there's a business case for it. There's a right thing to do. And then there's a legal aspect of it. But we have to think about all three.
Okay. I would love to talk to you all for hours, and we'll just do another episode. How's that? I unfortunately have to run. I have to run because I have to do a webinar. We've been talking for 45 minutes, and I think there's so much in it. I mean, I planned an event this summer, and I'm just going to say it's at the Marine Corps Museum in Quantico, Virginia, and it was a group of 81-year-old retired military Marines, and there was no close drop off. I mean, from the sidewalk to the entrance was probably 300 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I'm like, I've got people with disabilities and that's just a whole nother thing to think about as well.
Mm-hmm.
But just to end this, because I ask everybody this question, thinking from your perspective, what does a safe, sustainable, and inclusive experience, food and beverage experience, mean to you? And where do we take it from there, or from where we are?
Yeah, I'll start. For me, that means having a good experience just like everyone else. I want to have, as someone with a disability, I want to have the same experience just like everyone else. And as a person, I deserve that. And as a customer, a paying customer, I want that and I deserve it.
Awesome. Kim or Mike?
Yeah, I'll go because Kim's the smart one, and I'll let her wrap it up. But I would say that I agree with John, and I think etiquette. We just often undervalue etiquette so much, and we talk about. I wasn't raised with etiquette. I didn't understand disability etiquette inclusive, and a lot of organizations. And every conversation that I have, I always ask, "Have you gone through a course like this?" And no one has ever done it. And so to me, I think, we all can benefit from disability inclusion and etiquette and inclusive language. I think that is number one. I think kindness and just being comfortable being uncomfortable, being uncomfortable, because, there's been mistakes made on this call today, and it's just, we're just human beings. And I think, we need to just think of life from a universal perspective and how we can all participate and enjoy and not feel different than or shamed or guilted. These feelings, these toxic feelings are really bad for our mental health. And so I think we need to be a little bit more lenient and understanding and kind and also fully, obviously experiential for all people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Kim?
I think the two words or the two phrases that come to mind are being open-minded and making a commitment. So I think that is, approaching it, being willing to look at multiple sides, being open-minded, and then also just making that commitment, even if it's tiny. I mean, I know budgets vary and time limits and things like that, but making the smallest commitment, then you can just build on that. So it's, it's kind of one of those things where, just, make sure it's in the discussion every time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you have to be, whether it's food allergy, whether it's somebody who's blind walking through the room, or utilizing a wheelchair or wheelchair user, a variety of different ways to think about it. And you all are opening up so many people's eyes. Lynn is like, I'm learning so much. So thank you for sticking through here. And Joan actually had a recommendation to follow Jamie Shields, who's done some work with on apps. So
Thank you.
for LinkedIn tips on all things disability. So that's another person. So thank you all very, very much. I need to stop by the offices when I come to Raleigh next time and see ya. Because that office with the piano looks really cool. John, I heard you know how to play.
It's unfortunate you're not here, John.
We're sitting in the same seat.
Oh my God. Exactly. All right. Thank you, all three of you, Kim, Mike, and John. Oh, and to get a hold of them, just actually reach out to, where's that link here? There's Mike's LinkedIn profile, but you can also reach them on their Ablr at ablr.com, right? ABLR.
Ablr 360, ablr360.com.
Okay.
And thank you, Tracy, for having us on. And we really do appreciate everyone joining as well. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, everybody. And until next time, stay safe and eat well. Bye.